All right. So we're talking about the blood systems, or the blood typing, and so an antigen is just a general name for anything that the immune system can see. And one of the ways that an immune system sees things is it releases antibodies. Antibodies are proteins that float around in the blood plasma, and these proteins will attach themselves to an antigen, and that will allow the immune system to identify that as a target for attack. So we have these two images at the top here, and we can see in this case we have a couple of generic sort of cartoons, but let's look at this bacterial cell cartoon up here. We can see the bacteria cell in purple, and then on the outside of the bacteria cell are something called epitopes, or antigens. These are essentially our antigen chemicals. So they might be proteins, or maybe they're carbohydrates, fatty acids, whatever is composing the bacteria cell wall. Though the chemicals there, for whatever reason, the immune system has identified them as antigens, and it has created these antibodies that perfectly match the antigens of the bacteria cell. And this is a way for the immune system to now quickly react to the bacteria being present in its body. So in the case of a bacterial infection, as we'll talk about in our protection unit, a bacteria cell enters the body. If it's been previously identified by the body as an invader, then there will be antibodies floating around in your plasma. Those antibodies will attach themselves to the antigens on the outside of the bacteria cell, and then that will call over white blood cells to attack it. The white blood cells will be attracted to these antibodies, and then in turn they will be attracted to the bacteria cell, and they'll start eating it, and they'll defend themselves. So the problem is that depending on your blood type, you also have antigens on your blood. And those antigens can attract antibodies in a different person's plasma. And so if there is a donation of blood between two different individuals with different blood types, then the white blood cell system will attack that blood of the other type. So let's start with the Rhesus factor. This is an easier one. The Rhesus factor is an antigen protein that is found in the cell membrane of most humans. So most human bodies produce red blood cells that have something called a Rhesus factor on it. It's an antigen, it's a protein antigen that's on the outside of the red blood cell. So if we had to draw little cartoons, we would draw some sort of red blood cell like this, and a Rhesus positive red blood cell has little proteins on it that we can treat of as we can draw sort of little pluses. So what we're talking about here is if we looked at our animal cells, not perfect, or let's use this cell membrane picture here. So we can see on the cell membrane that if we look at this big image of the cell membrane, we can see these little things that are sticking out, these little cell proteins, right? So these are proteins in the cell membrane. Some of these cell membrane proteins have been identified by the immune system as antigens. And so if it's a foreign blood cell, if it's not your own blood cell, then the immune system has identified these antigens and wants to remove it. And this is useful because mixing of blood is a dangerous thing if you were a creature that doesn't have a medical system. So if you're a pair of apes, or you're a pair of apes in a fight, or even lions in a fight, or a lion and a zebra in a fight, and one draws blood on the other one, and then the blood splashes into your cuts. right? You don't really want to mix blood with another animal because that animal could be carrying some sort of disease that you don't have a defense system for. So by attacking the blood, you'll create a clot, and then you'll protect yourself from that blood invading your body. So creatures in general have a response to blood that's not their own to not accept it into the body, to attack that blood. And so the interesting thing is that 85% of people are Rhesus positive. That's around the world. But there are some individuals who are Rhesus negative. And so a Rhesus negative individual means that they do not create this thing. So wherever we had that little bump on the cell membrane in that picture, that would be smooth. It's missing. And so in that case, they do not have an antigen. And so they cannot create an antibody response. So if someone had Rhesus positive blood, but then they got a donation from a Rhesus negative individual, your body would not be able to identify that blood as an invader. What's that sit for? Remember that white blood cells can't see, right? They don't have eyes. They have chemical receptors on the outside. They can bump into things, and if there's a chemical interaction, if it's like a little lock and key system, if there's a chemical reaction, it will know to start eating it. So that chemical reaction is based on the antigens and the antibodies. If it doesn't see an antigen or an antibody, it won't know that it's supposed to eat it. If we didn't have this system, the white blood cells would just eat everything. It would eat your own cells, right? It would just start like chomping down on everything around it. So there has to be a system that controls the white blood cells to tell them where they should create clots, where they should create attacks, and where they shouldn't.